citizen, same vision is for equal rights and justice for the people them. What's happening to this beautiful world that we're living in? World citizen, lift up your voices.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the next edition of the People Powered Planet podcast. This is where each week we talk about how we, the people, can save this precious world of ours. We're focusing not just on problems, and there are so many deep problems in the world, but our specialty here is focusing on solutionaries, people who really come up with, like Gary did, with very creative solutions to the world's problems, and then actually implement them, not just talking about it. We want to move beyond talk to action. And the special guest we have today is filled with both beautiful talk and action. Barbara is one of the most inspiring people I know. She is the president of the Rotary E-Club of World Peace. If you go to Rotary E-Club of World Peace, search it online, you can watch replays of the wonderful interviews she does with top peacemakers around the world. And she also hosts her own podcast. It's the revolutionaryconversations.net podcast. And, you know, the incredible thing about Revolutionary Conversations is there are ways, she'll talk about this a little more. We'll ask her, what does that mean? And what could that mean for the world if we had a different kind of democratic system that used revolutionary conversations? But let's hold that till I finish just introducing her a little bit more. She's continuing the peace work that she and her husband, Robert Mueller, did. Now, Robert Mueller played key roles at the United Nations. He was many of the important United Nations programs are things that he started and got going and that grew and blossomed and are touching all of us in the world right now. So I won't say anything further. Let me get it right to Barbara so we can get right into it. Let me first start with just a little personal talk from Barbara about how she got started in this path and then how she met her husband, Robert, and how that helped move her journey forward. Barbara, welcome.
Well, thank you. That's a very nice introduction. I was 3 years old and my grandfather said to me one day, you know, you're going to be a peacemaker. And I said, well, okay, Grandpa, whatever that means. I'm so young. And he said, but look at all the years you have for being a peacemaker. Well, he was an immigrant from Hungary who wanted to avoid World War I, and I can tell you stories about that. But the important part was if he wouldn't have immigrated to the United States with $5 in his pocket, leaving his wealth, leaving his hairstyling salon, leaving the butcher shop they own, I wouldn't be here. I'd be in Hungary, and who even knows if I'd be alive. In 1956, they had the revolution. But my grandfather took it upon himself to show me. I wasn't even born when he immigrated here, but all his life he worked for peace until he passed.
And so then how did you meet Robert, and how did that amplify your journey for peace?
Well, thank you for asking, because I served on the board of, let me just start with, I live in Santa Barbara. In Santa Barbara, we have the privilege of having beautiful air, beautiful climate, and beautiful people. That means we're responsible. We need to do something. And so I joined the board of directors for La Casa de Maria, which is a retreat center in Santa Barbara. And when I joined, I spent 25 years on that board because I saw the results of people coming and having that place of contemplation, that place where they could work on peace. And then after about 20 years, I said to the board, where do world leaders go to bring peace into their life? How do they get healed? And they said, well, we don't know. What do you want to do about it? And I said, well, why don't we have a conference? And Douglas Gillies, the biographer of Robert now, said, why don't we have an invitational? Let's invite world leaders to discuss one problem. Well, the first problem was, how do you go from linear thinking to holistic thinking? And that was John Van Zandt. Well, he invited Robert to this meeting, and Robert was in Costa Rica, and Robert replied, I will attend with enthusiasm. All of you remember that if you're going to do something, do it with enthusiasm. And so anyway, he came to the La Casa Invitational. John Van Zandt invited him, and everybody kept saying, you know Robert Mueller? And I'd say, and I didn't know him from anybody because I had never met him. And everybody kept saying, he's a pretty powerful peacemaker. And a peacemaker. And so we started talking, and we had 5 invitationals, and the second one he led. And by then we were really serious about each other. And
That's great. I want to move on a little bit just to, so tell us a little bit more, because that ties right into the People Powered Planet podcast and so on, how Robert Mueller got started on his journey and what role Gary Davis played in that.
You know, it's so interesting because he was 3, when he was 3, he said to his father, I'm going to be a peacemaker. And his father said, well, I pity you, young man, because there are no such things and you'll be poor. Well, fast forward to the University of Strasbourg. Here he is at about a senior at Strasbourg, and he sees a little note on the bulletin board. If you can answer this question, you'll get an internship at the United Nations Association, the newly created United Nations Association. And Robert said, that's for me. So he wrote the essay and then forgot about it. And a few months later, knock on the door at his home in war-torn Alsace-Lorraine, if you can imagine, the French shooting the Germans shooting the French, and they were cousins and eating the same food. But because of nationalism, they had to shoot each other. Long story short, he knocked on the door and said, is Robert Mueller here? And his mother said, what do you want him for? Because this is wartime. You know, everybody's suspicious. And so he comes and says, okay, what do you want me for? And he said, you won the contest. And Robert forgot he had even entered the contest. And he got a trip to the United Nations and spent the next 40 years working for peace, which was his dream, to work for peace. I want all of the people listening today, don't forget that peace is possible, and it begins with each of us. If I can do one thing today, I want it cemented in your brain that peace is possible. And look at Gary Davis. Gary Davis never gave up. Gary Davis, that amazing peacemaker, he was so popular that he didn't even know what to do with his popularity, but the world wanted him to show them how to achieve a world citizenship, a way that we could all be brothers and sisters and unified under this passable peace country, world, nation. You know, I look at the United States and I think we need a united world.
Well, and I understand that Robert also was influenced because Gary was stuck there on the borderline right in Strasbourg, right near his home.
That's correct.
And so this was part of what inspired him, he said, on his journey, right? As he went to the UN, he got to hear about this world citizen.
Well, you know, Gary Davis had a knack. He could get Life magazine to put him on the cover. Gary Davis had a knack. He was able to get the United Nations to speak at the United Nations. Think about that. Gary Davis was my hero. I knew about Gary Davis because I had an old Life magazine that had Gary Davis on the cover. And I thought, my gosh, if that man can create that kind of a movement for world citizenship, then I'm going to pay attention. And that's how it started. I still have the Life magazine.
Well, in our movie, The World Is My Country, you show us your Life magazine at the end, and you talk about Gary and Robert. You talk about Robert going back with you to the place where Gary was stuck on the border between those two countries for 2 months because he was a world citizen.
Well, you know, we all have an energy. And I swear he left his energy there as I stood there in the same place that he had built his tent and his little cook stove and his little way to make coffee. I felt he was right there. And all of us, we have energy, and that energy lasts beyond us. Robert, when he passed in 2010, said, right before he passed, you know, I'm going to be leaving now. And I was crying because I didn't want him to leave. I loved him. But he said, all my dreams will not be fulfilled by me, but they will be fulfilled by future generations. And that's what peace does. Peace sends a vibration into the planet. And if we can remember that peace is possible and it begins with each of us, John Kennedy said, first, examine our attitudes toward peace itself. Too many of us think it's impossible. Too many of us think it's unreal. Well, Robert didn't think it was unreal. He felt that peace has to be worked for. It's not enough to believe in peace. You must put action behind your words. And that's why I'm president of the Rotary E-Club. That's why I'm president of the United Nations Association. That's why I do Peace Podcast. If we don't do something with this idea of what peace can mean to the planet, just think if we were at peace, we would have food for everybody. We'd have families that could be in harmony and live in the places they were born, not be in war-torn countries. So peace to me is the only answer. And in 1999, both Robert and I are members of the Club of Budapest. And Irvin Laszlo, my dear, dear friend, asked us to write our agenda for the future. And those of you who were reading my, I guess, a little overview of what I was going to talk about today, Robert and I created an agenda for the future, which is in one of our 7,500 ideas and dreams. And it says to make this planet a paradise. We had a paradise when we were born, but look what we've done to it. To stop destroying nature at all costs, to eradicate all the poverty, miseries, and errors, and greed created these. To create a new social political world order, to obtain a life of fulfillment, to achieve a human family in harmony with the earth and the heavens, to be the ultimate cosmic success of the universe and God. And as we say all the time, no dream is too big, and we can see the world with the global eyes and global heart, which was what Gary Davis believed in.
One of the things that Gary realized is it's the systems that create war or peace, that we already have invented a system that eliminates war. Inside countries with one government, we don't fight wars. Civil wars, well, two sovereignties inside one territory. But if everybody can create one government, one way of governing our world, then we can actually eliminate war. Now, the challenge is that everyone says, well, but then one government, it'll be, we've seen how horrible governments can be and how oppressive they can be. And why would we want that over all of us? What kind of, when you look at your agenda of the future, what kind of new kinds of governance can be developed that don't depend on oppression, but depend instead on bottom-up revolutionary conversations, kind of new ways of doing things in the world?
That's a very interesting question. First, let me define peace. Peace is the wholeness created by right relationships with oneself, other persons, other cultures, other life, earth, and the larger whole of which we are all a part of. The larger whole of which we are all a part of. That comes from the United Nations Earth Charter. The earth has so much to teach us. The earth and the nature it is supporting has that harmony that we're looking for in our relationships with each other, in our relationships with the world. And nation states cause all sorts of issues. And that's why Gary wanted a world passport, because he felt that if we were in harmony as a world citizen, rather than a United States citizen, the Hungarian, whatever, then we would be able to work together to solve issues that are facing some of our countries that do not have the benefits that we have. So your question was really important, because today we have nation states. And I remember Robert giving me this example. I said, well, Robert, how are we going to get the world to fall in love with the world? Because that's how Civil War ended. Freud asked, I think it was, well, anyway, the question was, how are we going to get peace when the Civil War was on? And they said we had to make the people who were warring fall in love with the United States. And so that love that we had stalled that Civil War. I wish we could do it right now with the issues that we're faced today. And there's so many issues that we're facing. These are challenging times. That's why you have to be the peace that other people may need. I was just reading a new book, hasn't even been out, and I can't even tell you about it because I swear I wouldn't tell anybody. But the book talks about time. The book also talks about our memory and also about our mind. Time, memory, and mind. Do you know how powerful your mind is? They've done research recently that shows that if a group of people pray for somebody, they don't even have to know you're praying for them, that there will be a miraculous healing if they're in trouble. Things will start to change. And so we have to watch what we're thinking. what we think has power beyond even our own selves. And so when I talk to somebody, I say, what are you thinking about now? I ask the question, what are you thinking about? And I say, can I just ask you to spend a little time every day to think about peace? What peace means? Because when you think about peace, it becomes peaceful. We would be doing speeches. We were in Sardinia, and Robert's doing a speech, and the man says, what are you doing up there, Dr. Mueller? You're the big famous UN Dr. Mueller, and I'm just nobody. Robert said, what were you doing at 5 o'clock this morning? And the man said, sleeping. He said, not me. I was out there cleaning the beach, because I know what I do makes a difference. Well, now in Sardinia, every year they have clean the beach and all the other things. But the point is, one person can make a difference.
Well, that's incredible. It's an incredible lesson for all of us, because indeed, as it's been pointed out, that's the only thing that has changed things. That we sometimes get stuck in these old systems and don't get to see that we actually, in fact, we get so caught up in so much of the media that's negative and oppressive, and movies that show that violent solutions, that's what we program our mind into. And if we actually start to visualize the alternatives, is there a possibility that by the very fact of visualizing them in our movies, in our communications, in our clubs, that we can actually make a leap and create something completely new, not just try to fix the old system, create something new for humanity as you look into the future? What do you see?
Well, when I go right back to the individual. Peace is possible, and it begins with me. Peace is possible. Wherever you are, you can be that peace messenger. If you're in a gas station, think about what you can do in that moment for peace. Maybe say good morning to the person next to you. I went in to pay my bill at the pre-COVID-19, and I went in to pay my bill, and there was a homeless man counting out his pennies for his breakfast. And I said, oh, put your money away, I'll pay for your breakfast. Now that was a way of me to create peace in the moment. Everybody in that little shop were smiling, because I did nothing more than add a $2 breakfast to my own credit card. But those are the ways that you become an example of peace. You become the model that we need to remember that peace is possible. Do you know what stops people from thinking about peace? They forget to think about peace, and they don't think peace is possible. If I were to give you 2 commandments today, thou shalt remember, peace is possible. And the second commandment, it begins with me. And my thoughts, when people would say, well, you're so important, Dr. Mueller, the world is so messed up now. What am I supposed to do? Robert said, what are you thinking about? Are you thinking about a world that you want? You want your grandchildren to have? I became a peacemaker because I wasn't going to go through the wars that I experienced. I became a prisoner. But I kept my thoughts on peace. I don't care where I was. I kept thinking the world I want is one where nature is free. People are free. And we can live the potential we were born with, our destiny.
Beautiful. Beautiful to create that vision, and by the power of that vision, attract people to it rather than fight against the old system. And along that lines, I have a question about revolutionary conversations. Many times conversations between polar opposite people, who's right and who's wrong, and they're fighting it out, and it gets worse and worse and more escalated. What's the difference? What does revolutionary conversations do that's different than that?
That's the book, Revolutionary Conversations, that I co-authored. And it's about how you change the world through your conversations, how you become a partner with that person. This really works in our workshops. There were so many people who lost friendships when Trump was running the first, and when he won, friendships were just disappearing. Marriages were breaking up. And so we said, if you just listen for a moment, there's 5 steps to revolutionary conversation. And the first one is stop. When you're confronted by somebody who's really upset, just stop a minute. Center yourself and be present. And I use that word stop because before you move in from a stop sign, you make sure it's safe. You don't just burr out there with a stop sign. In a stop, you stop, just make sure it's safe to go forward. So in a conversation, you can stop and ask me, I ask you a question. Stop, ask. hey, I need a little help. I want to really understand what you're saying, rather than, you know, having that upset moment when you just think, geez, that person has no brains. Where are they coming from? You just stop and you remember that that's a human being that really wants peace as you do, believe it or not. So then you say, I need a little help. Can I ask you a question? So it's stop, help, ask, risk. Once you understand where they're coming from, then you can say, may I take a risk here? I'd like to let you hear how I feel about that. I have not walked in your shoes, but I want to be here with you, and I heard you today. And then I'd like to explore. Well, those steps are the revolution that I said would happen if we actually did it. If we actually stop beating the person up who disagrees with us with our words and with our actions, if we actually stop. But you have to be whole. You have to be whole within yourself. You have to feel that what you are doing at that moment is important. And so that's why we wrote the book, because I saw too many peace negotiations fail because people were not asking what that person was trying to accomplish.
Yeah, getting down to what they basically want, we can begin to find that people all have the same needs and wants, right? When you get to the basis.
That sounds like Marshall Rosenberg, you know, the nonviolent communication, because he always said, if you can imagine what that person needs in that moment, you can really solve their problems and you can help them solve them for themselves. Oh my gosh, there's so much out there. How many books do we read? Look at Robert. He wrote these hundreds of books, and he has his golden sayings. And he said, we must believe in evolution, which is the key to humanity's success. We're always going to have problems, but we have to be there in peace so that we can have our brains on to solve these problems. On nations, you don't want to nationalize your natural resources, but you have 100% nationalized your people. And so it's going back to Gary Davis again. I don't want to be a US citizen. I want to be a mother with all the mothers can join together. The grandmothers can join together. I'd rather be at that point rather than, you know, just thinking about, well, I'm a US citizen and you're wrong.
So let's move on to the next big passion in your life, which is the Rotary E-Club of World Peace. Tell us a moment how that got going and how people can also be a part of that.
The Rotary E-Club is the result of a 2016 World Peace Conference, and the World Peace Conference was held in Ontario, and I interviewed 85 of the speakers who were going to speak at the conference so that people could decide which topics they wanted to explore when they were at the conference. And every one of those speakers said to me, when I asked the question, what does peace mean to you? Since this is a World Peace Conference, they kept saying, peace begins with me and starts with a conversation. Well, I have that in my brain for life. Peace begins with me and starts with every conversation, every interaction. So those people who were at that conference, over 1,500 of them, and those speakers, I said, we can't stop. We have to have something that will last beyond us. And I said, you know, there are 35,000 Rotary clubs out there. And Rudy Westervelt was the convener of that conference, and I was his partner. And we said, let's start the Rotary E-Club of World Peace. So you go to Rotary E-Club of worldpeace.org, and you can listen to all the speakers that we have had come on since 2016, January, when we started the Rotary E-Club. It's a very inexpensive way to be connected to the world that works. And you know what the motto of Rotary is? I have my little pin here, service above self. My little pin says, peace through service. And my pin that I wear everywhere for our Rotary E-Club says peace. And peace is my motto.
And one of them says, Rotary, connect the world. And that's my favorite pin, because I think that's our key, is to connect the world. Yes, we need these incredible revolutionary conversations between us, but now with these new Zoom tools, like I just got a call this morning from a fellow, Abdul, I don't know if he's on our forecast, no, he's not, in Pakistan. And he called me on WhatsApp and sent me a picture of his beautiful poster talking about the world is my country and peace, and how his club is reaching out to other people there in Pakistan building peace. And, you know, we can cross with the new digital tools, we can cross the divides of the world where, you know, things that we could only dream about in the past of interconnecting people, we had to travel thousands of miles to do, we can do in instance. How can these kind of revolutionary conversations bring groups that are maybe groups of people like this who are on opposite sides of issues together to make breakthroughs and to begin to connect in ways where we find our common humanity?
That's really a beautiful way to put it, to find our commonalities, to find our common humanity. That's why I do peacepodcast.org, because I can be with Sila, the one who wrote the book, Pioneering the Possible. And I have all of these incredible people on Peace Podcast. Why? Because I'm engineering the consent of the public. I want the public to believe that peace is possible. Our wonderful Edward Bernays, the founder of public relations, was my mentor in my early life when I was in public relations. And he said, you have to engineer the consent of the publics that you're expecting to, you know, to help you. So how do you do that? Through awareness. You let them know, as you're doing, Arthur, as you do with your film on Gary Davis, you're bringing their attention to peace. That's awareness. Then you give them information. That's why I do the Peace Podcast, so people can see what you can do. Awakening the leadership that's in you. People just don't believe in themselves as enough if they did. If they did, we'd have a fabulous planet. So believe in yourself. So awareness, information, persuasion to do something. I'm persuading people today to again believe that peace is possible and that it begins with my actions and everything. Awareness, information, persuasion, reassurance. Now, why do I do the reassuring? I do it through my Peace Podcast, because those mentors who get on, like Irvin Laszlo, like Gary Davis, if he were still here, like Arthur, then I reassure the publics that we still have these fabulous people out there. And then last but not least, evaluation. That's how Edward Bernays got us to eat a banana, by finding out what's in a banana every day. The United Fruit Company came to him and said, we're not selling enough bananas. And Edward Bernays said, well, do you know what's in a banana? And they said, no. Well, long story short, they found out that it helped colicky baby stomach aches. Why do you think your strained peaches, if you're a mom, has bananas in it? Because it keeps their stomach aches away. So, you know, he then put it in the medical journal. I mean, Edward Bernays said, if you can't sell the benefits, and we have to put our heads together and sell the benefits of peace. What are the benefits of peace? A world that works for all, a world that saves the resources, a world that makes everybody count. That's what we're selling. Peace is possible, and it begins with me.
Absolutely. Well, I love that you mentioned the word engineer. So many things you're saying strike close to me. I also started my peace journey at age 3 when I said to my dad, why don't they take all the guns and melt them down and turn them into doorknobs? And my journey has been one of opening doors to peace, like yours, from you, Robert, and I, where we have to have the 3-year-old club. Anyway, my dad would talk about peace engineering, and you know, he had a very scientific mind, and I could have gone into being a scientist. I did very well in physics and in those kind of subjects. But I said, who needs to engineer another product, another physical thing? We've got too many. We need to engineer peace. And I dedicated my life to figuring out how we engineer peace. So, in fact, I have a proposal for a film called Astrocops, Peace Engineers of the Future, who use these great tools you're talking about, like revolutionary conversations, but also, well, it's a whole nother subject. We'll go into that another time. But what I'd like to know is more about what you're saying about how do we, in that scientific way, engineer peace rather than just pray for peace, hope for peace, beg for peace, actually engineer peace.
That's important. I think we have to hope for peace. We have to put peace in our mind. We have to imagine a world that works for all. As I was telling you the story of Sardinia, one of the men said, well, what are you thinking right now? And Robert said, I'm thinking about a world that is at peace. And that's the way I live my life. When I'm eating dinner, I'm thinking about a world that works for peace. Why did he write 7,500 ideas and dreams with my help for a better world? Because he was at the United Nations for 40 years. Now, I'm going to tell everyone, pay attention to the coincidences in your life. Watch the coincidences. They're a part of the destiny that's encoded in you. Pay attention. I would never have met Robert Muller if I wouldn't have served on the board of La Casa de Maria for 25 years. And He was in Costa Rica, just having formed and founded the newly created University for Peace with Rodrigo Carazo. And I'm in Santa Barbara. What are the chances that he comes to Santa Barbara for the peace conference? Actually, it was called the Invitational. And I meet him. And it was as if we were magnets. Everybody would say, why are you together? Watch what's coming into your life and pay attention, because what happens is these coincidences help you steer your life into the destiny that you have coded in you. We were born with a purpose. What are the chances that we would even be born? Think about that. There's billions of cells that went the other direction, and here we are. We have a responsibility with this fabulous responsibility of pioneering the possible through our peace work. And so I just want to thank everybody on today, because each of you, as I look at these names, I see Al Jubitz founding the Rotary Action Group for Peace. I see Wayne, I see Andrew, I see Joni. Joni, she's the reason I met Rudy. Rudy called up Avon Madison Pathways to Peace. A coincidence. Joni knew me as a peacemaker. She said to Rudy, there's only one person that can help you with the Rotary Peace Conference. Her name is Barbara Mueller. Rudy called me up, brought Karen to Santa Barbara, and the rest is history. The same way when Robert came to Santa Barbara for the Invitational, I pay attention, open those doors that come your way. You can always go back out and close them, but open those doors and walk through and see the destiny. People say to me when I'm on the radio, well, how do I know if I'm on my destiny? I say, are you happy? Do you feel empowered when you wake up in the morning? Are you ready to do something? Then you might be on your code of destiny. They also ask me, how do I find the right person to marry? I say, you're not going to find them. You're going to attract them. Who you are speaks louder than what you say. I would never have been attracted to Robert or me to him to me if I wouldn't have been a peacemaker at my core, an enthusiastic peacemaker. So if I leave any messages today, peace is possible, begins with me, and be enthusiastic for peace in a way that doesn't overpower the people you're with, but shows them by your example how wonderful peace can be.
Well, you are such a spark of enthusiasm, and I see some questions maybe coming up here. Oh, I see that we have a question about Gene Stevens is talking about the importance of humor. Maybe as part of that enthusiasm and how we connect together. I don't know if Gene wants to say something about that, or I'll let Melanie take it.
Always was telling people jokes, and they were so dorky, but it doesn't matter because they would laugh. And he even wrote the World Joke Book. And, you know,
oh, really?
It opens
Tell us about the World Joke Book. I didn't know that. Tell us about that World Joke Book.
Humor opens up your heart. It just opens you up. Laughter, crying, music, all of those. Look at Joni. Joni is who she is because she is always there with her words, her love. And I think that joke book, the World Joke Book, the Secretary General would have this huge meeting coming up, right? And at the United Nations in the General Assembly, and he'd run into Robert and say, tell me a joke. I have to get in there and create some peace. Tell me a joke. Robert would tell him a joke. He'd take it into the General Assembly. Everybody would laugh, and they would begin the conversation. Now, when Robert made a speech, how did he begin his? Harmonica, do, 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 the Ode to Joy. Later on, what happened? Schumann took that Ode to Joy, and it became the model for the European Union. Think about all the things that we can do just by being alive. I look at Mike Caruso. These are the people who are making a difference. You got the best people on today.
Great. Oh, and I see Al Jubitz. Great. Well, I'd love to get a copy of that World Joke Book. How can I get one?
Well, I could give you one, but you have to promise you can't show it to anybody. It is so full of stereotypes that we have violated the rules. In the old days, you could get away with that.
I'll keep it secret.
I have to change every word in the whole book, even though they're funny. They're not funny anymore.
Humor actually can be a way to stop imminent violence. So really powerful. Meanwhile, let me turn it over to Melanie, because I think we're having some questions with some of the wonderful people on the show here today. Let's see who wants to ask a question, and Melanie can handle that.
Yes, we do have some questions. Barbara, we love your enthusiasm. The chat's like, oh my gosh, Barbara, she's amazing. And I love the part about stopping and taking a risk and really finding out what the person's trying to say, really. And I don't know how anyone couldn't talk to you in a nice, peaceful way, because you just have that peace. And I think that's what you're saying, is just be peaceful yourself, and it comes through.
And add the one more, Melanie, love humanity. When you love humanity, everybody is perfect. You know, you can't look at their flaws. You look at the love you feel for them, that they were born. And so I add one more thing, Melanie, and that's just treat the world with love.
So perfect. Oh, I'm gonna try. And now we do have questions, and we'd like to go to Jerry Tettleman first. Jerry, if you go right ahead, unmute.
Thanks, Melanie. Barbara, I have to say I really appreciate the work that you've done, and I do remember hearing your husband speak a number of years ago in San Francisco at a convention, and he was a great speaker. It was very inspiring. I wanted to get your take on, you know, maybe some of the things that are happening now with the global pandemic and the opportunities for peace because of that pandemic. I know that there's a call for a global ceasefire, and there's also the initiative to ban nuclear weapons that is out there and has been ratified by 50 countries and enough to bring it into force. I want to see what your take on that is, you know, that we are in this global pandemic and there is this opportunity for peace. And how do you see these initiatives, and you know, what is your take on those two initiatives?
Well, first I have to say more power to them. The peace accords that are happening right now are very personal and real. Secretary General Antonio Guterres at the United Nations said, let's end all wars and let's have a war on COVID-19. Putin, the same thing, end all wars in Russia. Last night we had Sharon Tennyson on. If you want to hear what's going on in Russia, go to Rotary E Club of World Peace and listen to Sharon Tennyson. Every year for the past 25 years, she has taken 100 to 200 people to Russia. She has gotten millions of dollars to bring Russians to the United States. Her goal is to have peace. We don't need a Cold War. We need peace wars. Peace is our possibility. I don't even like the word war. I don't like waging peace. I like living peace. I want us to live the peace that we want. And Jerry, I guess the answer is, it's there if we only listen. If our ambassadors, Robert would be at the United Nations, and the ambassador would come in to talk to Utant, Secretary General Utant, and they would say, oh, Secretary General Utant, you've got to take care of this, you've got to do that. And he would say, excuse me, I'm the Secretary General, and you are two ambassadors. Go in the hall and have a conversation and come back and tell me how you settled it. He always felt that we had the wisdom to solve these problems within us if we gave us the time. There's a couple of things that work in my life. I need to be peaceful. I need to have quiet time. I have to meditate. Then I can go back to my enthusiastic self. But if I don't take care of myself in this pandemic, wear my mask, wash my hands, don't let anybody in the house who I don't know, I then take care of myself so that I can work on peace. I know my destiny has to be clean and I have to be healthy. So I start with myself. If I'm out there, I carry masks with me. I go to the bank and some ladies, I don't have a mask, I can't go in. I say, have this one. I carry masks with me. I carry dollar bills with me. I carry clean socks for the homeless. I carry food packs. I carry dog food, all of that in my little car because I know somebody's gonna need it. So I just hand it out. When I meet a homeless person with a dog, I say, well, here's the dinner for your dog and the dinner for you and a clean pair of socks. It's not a big deal. It's just not a big deal. It just makes a day for somebody.
Wow. Thank you so much, Barbara. That is so beautiful and encouraging. You know, that's simple things we can all do. And it's making the world a better place. So that's,
you know, the mask started in Santa Barbara because we were devastated with fires. We couldn't breathe. We were sitting in our own living room wearing a mask. So I collected masks in the beginning when the fires were here, and I still have piles of masks that I give to everybody because I know they need them. They don't go to the store as often as they couldn't buy those masks.
Oh, wow. Perfect. Thank you. Yes, now we would like to go to Al Jubitz, if you'd like to go ahead with your question.
Thank you, Melanie, and thank you, Barbara. Gosh, you're a master interviewer and a master interviewee. I think your wisdom, your life's journey is so valid for those of us that have just touched a part of what you've said. I hope you keep talking about what works over and over again. My question is, the world citizen, that idea that's been around since Gary Davis. And I watched the Arthur's movie just yesterday again, the condensed version for PBS, which will start in many areas on December 10th. But do you think that it is time for the United Nations to issue a world passport, both to those that maybe pledge to peacefulness, put down 5 or 6 thou shalt, and or those that are stateless due to refugee or either climate or conflict refugees? I mean, you know a lot about the United Nations. What's your take on the timing of this idea?
Well, it's a brilliant idea, Al. And I also think it's possible, but it's so slow. The United Nations has to have an ambassador who says, yes, this is what we want to do. They have to take it to the General Assembly. The General Assembly has to hear the pros and the cons. And by the time they get it done, we're into 2029. So, I think we have to move quicker. And I love the idea of a global citizen passport, a world citizen passport. So many refugees in different refugee camps have world citizen passports. I don't know how they got them, but it makes a big difference. It just is important. So find an ambassador. We know Ambassador Chaudhry just got our Robert Mueller Peace Prize. And you can talk to Ambassador Chaudhry. He is so open to helping us. Write a note to your ambassador. Also, I want you to do another thing. Tell people when they do something you like, either tell them in person or write to the newspaper and say, I just heard. Keep your voice out there. I just heard Al Jubitz, and I hear he's going to get the Legacy of Peace Award on December 5th. He started the RAG, the Rotary Action Group for World Peace. I hope you all join it. Send a note. Send a note. If you find a person who's wrote an article about something you like in the Washington Post, I call them up. I call up the Washington Post now. Since they're all home, I just send emails. As soon as somebody does something I like, I talk about. Okay, so going back to Ambassador Chaudhry, he got in the year 2000, he got a World Year of Thanksgiving. It took him 4 years to create it, but it happened. So, I don't think an idea dies just because it's going to take time, but an idea dies if we don't work on it. So I think, Al, that's the beginning is we must let Ambassador Chaudhry know that this is possible. We show him the movie, Al. We show, and Arthur, you have to get that movie to me so I can send it to him. I'll talk to Ambassador Chaudhry and tell him, Robert Mueller never took no for an answer, Ambassador. I want you to help us get world citizenship passports for the world. Every immigrant, every person who immigrates from, like my grandfather, I wouldn't be here if he wouldn't have taken the guts to get on that boat and come here with $5 in his pocket. And so it takes guts to do what we have to do, but we have to be committed enough so that if something comes that doesn't work, we don't give up.
I have a world citizen passport.
Yay!
Yay!
Oh, you do, Joni. Good. I'm gonna finally apply. Yeah.
Huh? Al,
well,
sorry.
do you think we should have a pledge? Is there a pledge requirement of a behavioral pledge? No? Okay.
No.
All right.
Nope.
I'm going to apply. Arthur, finally, I'm going to apply.
Yay, and guess what? You can do it online. You can do it online off our website. You just go to theworldismycountry.com, theworldismycountry.com/passport and go to the bottom. You'll get a link. You can go do it online. It's so simple now and so important. It's an identification. It brings your mind up to a different level, and you have something that you could show people. It really adds to the conversation because they're like, I've never thought of that. Yes, I guess I am a world citizen. I guess I do care about the world. We all share the same air, the same water. Oh yeah, now that I think of it, we have to work together to survive. And so it adds to the conversation.
And Robert always said, Keep your dreams alive. And even if they aren't fulfilled in your lifetime, the fact that you thought them puts an energy out there and somebody else may fulfill them. Let me give you an example. Robert was in an economic meeting at the United Nations and they were talking about money as economics and, you know, the passports for money. And he said, wait a minute, don't you think food is a kind of a commodity that's like capital? And they said, yeah. And he said, well, look at the silos that we're burning of all the extra food that people are not eating so they can keep the prices high. What if we started a program, the World Food Program? Well, that took years to start, but it did take off. His daughter is in Guatemala. She is at a refugee camp. And who is feeding her? The World Food Program is feeding her and all those immigrants who are sitting there in Guatemala. Her idea was, if my dad wouldn't have started that, we would have starved. So you see, you never know the ramifications of your ideas. These ideas just live beyond you. They're out there in the ethers. Every word we say, every thought we have carries an energy. And I truly believe, because I have seen miracles happen, and I keep thinking, wow, wow. You know what wow means? Wow is what you discover when you're in gratitude. I'm just grateful every morning when I wake up. I'm not young, but I'm grateful that I have energy, and I think that keeps me young. Right, Al?
Absolutely, Barbara, without question. All my mentors in peace have lived into their 90s, so I'm trying to follow that track.
Oh,
Mentor some people younger than me.
Yes. Well, 90's the new 70, so you're good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
yeah.
No.
And when I met Robert, he was 20 years older, but my grandparents were always my favorite people. So I said, okay, there's Robert, that beautiful, handsome, gray-haired man with the twinkle in his eye, and we're going to fall in love. I knew it. You have a 3-second window. One day I said to Robert, I love you. You know how you say, I love you, you're so cute. He said, I love you. And I said in that 3 seconds, if I say I love you back the way he said it to me, my life would change.
Yeah.
And was I open to it? Your life flashes. I said, I love you too. And the next thing I know, I'm living in a pathetic old cabin in Costa Rica at the University for Peace with mosquitoes as big as a cow biting me every night. I was in love. I had a mosquito.
It was not pathetic at all.
It's what it is. And Joni was there with her beautiful man, and she didn't even realize he was in love with her. So I say to Joni, Joni, do you realize this man that you're with is in love with you? And what does Joni say? Oh, he likes everybody. I said, Joni, pay attention. What do you think happened? What happened, Joni?
We got married.
Somebody has to sometimes open the door for you. Pay attention to who you are attracting. People say to me, I have the worst people in my life. What? Oh, well, what are you attracting? Who are you? Pay attention. Look in the mirror. And long story short, we attract who we are. This is a hard concept for people, but it's a truth. Who you are speaks louder than what you say. Right, Mike Caruso? This man, if you wait till he gets on, you guys will die. He's so wonderful. Mike, is it true? We attract what we are?
Absolutely. And one thing that I always remember is the year I was district governor. The Rotary International president was Kalyan Banerjee, and he was from the same state as Mahatma Gandhi. And his theme, Reach Within to Embrace Humanity, was kind of alongside the peace. I didn't realize it at the time, but it was totally peace. And he said you have to have peace within yourself, and then you can spread this to your family, to your community, to your neighborhood, and then go out publicly to beyond that.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. Oh, we have another question. A comment. Joseph Branca, would you like to go ahead?
Yeah, just a comment. As an undergrad, I read William James's article, The Moral Equivalent of War, and I strongly recommend that. He basically says the human condition is pushed towards altruism in times of adversity. Humans have a need to obey. Humans have a need to collaborate. And he said, why should we have the armed forces where people obey to kill? We should have a Peace Corps where people can obey and collaborate to, I don't know, feed the world, feed the hungry, or do whatever. So from what you said, that reminded me of that. And
that idea about the Peace Corps, think about that. All the people on my board who have been in the Peace Corps, on my United Nations Association board, are the most peaceful peacemakers I've ever met. And there's something about working for peace in a country where you have no idea their customs, you don't know how to eat their food, you don't have an iPhone, all of a sudden you become peace in action. And that's a hard thing for people to remember, that you can survive. I survived in Costa Rica in the worst cabin you've ever seen. It was so run down that I thought the termites were gonna carry it away. But I didn't think about that. I thought about the tradition that mountain, I was living on Mount Rasur, and the tradition and the legend said, from this mountain, it's gonna bring tears to my eyes, peace will go to the entire world. We bought that property. We didn't know that when we bought it. We just knew that the little man living down at the bottom of the hill next to the University for Peace was so poor he couldn't feed his family. So he said, would you just buy this property, please? And Robert said, well, how much do you want? 10 hectares is like 25 acres. Oh, I want 75,000. Okay, I'll pay for it. And he bought it. That's why we live there, because he took that 75,000, and now we have this magic place in Costa Rica. Still, the cabin's the same. Nothing's changed. We still hope the termites don't tear it down. But when my gardener saw it, he said, that's how poor people live. And I said, no, that's how people who are in love live. We don't care about all the trappings. We care about the peace that we are going to get from this mountain peace. If you don't know the Mount Resort legend, look it up on the internet. Go to robertmuller.org and read the book. And you'll see that cabin down at the bottom of the hill, this tiny little cabin that we lived in, surrounded by acres of green banana trees and palm trees and orchids. I was in paradise, the original paradise, and we never built on it because we knew that this was the indigenous path for the indigenous animals. North America to South America, we were right in the middle. And someday I want a Robert Muller Peace Park. I want everybody to be able to go there and have that luxury of living in peace and in harmony with nature.
Barbara, I just want a special thank you and Robert for not building on that property. Thank you so much, because people need to appreciate just nature. We need open space. We can't just look at a piece of property, it's flat. Oh, that's good for a house. Oh, I can make some money. I want a special thank you to you from my heart, recognizing the importance of that, the importance of leaving things how they should be. So thank you.
You're welcome.
And now, oh my gosh, our time has just flown by. And now I think Arthur has a couple of announcements, but before we go, from my part, thank you so much for being here, Barbara. This is an honor for us. And we love having you, love talking to you, love being with you. Can't wait to see you again. So, okay, so back to Arthur. Arthur.
We have some some breaking news, a new development. First of all, starting off, thanks to Al Jubitz, who gave the capstone donation to start out our plan to get our film on public broadcasting stations all across the nation. We had some setbacks because of COVID for a while, but now we got that going, and we got that all in place. And now we just had another new breakthrough. We've had a key connection that's grown out of that wants to have our show, well, it's not fixed. This is preliminary. We don't know yet, but it looks like they're going to pick it up on the World Channel in April, which means that it would go out much. World is a big part of PBS. The way it was before, we were going to be part of the kind of independent shows on PBS. But if we're part of the thing that World puts out, they're running a whole series of documentaries on special issues around that Earth Day month, where we might fall into that and reach a much larger audience. But they've said they can't do that if we have it out in December. We've got to postpone it. So it looks like we might be postponing that. It's not fixed. This is still up in flux, but it looks like we might be postponing that December broadcast for a much bigger opportunity to get a much bigger reach on public broadcasting. So we appreciate very much Al and anyone who can be a part of that.
Yes.
And one of the key parts of that is that there are a lot of costs involved with getting this for PBS, editing it down shorter, all the things we've had to do. And so we're really looking for more sponsors. And as Al saw at the beginning of the movie, we say this program brought to you by, and it mentions Al Jubitz and others. And we'd like to have it mention you, for as little as $1,000 to just have a name mentioned, but more to have it, have your name spoken and have even a logo for your organization or club. There are other rates going up from there to 5 or 25 for even a 15-second educational kind of, would be called an ad, but on PBS, you've seen them. They're little educational spots. Anyway, we so appreciate that. We so appreciate all of you. And Barbara, we just love you. I can't tell you how much you just lift our hearts. You lift our energy. You take us into a whole new space. And you are the kind of light of one candle that lights another, that lights the world and brings us this beautiful people-powered planet. So yes, indeed, we are engineering, we're visualizing, we're creating the future here and now, and you are a key spark for doing that.
And if you need a motivation, go to peacepodcast.org and listen to these peacemakers. They'll motivate you in 15 minutes. I never make them more than 15 minutes because we're too busy. So peacepodcast.org. If you want to be on, send me an email. I'll be delighted to interview you. I just want peacemakers to remember that. Remember that reassurance. When you get on Peace Podcast, you're reassuring people that peace can work. And it's possible, and we want to honor you. That's why we gave Ambassador Chaudhry, who I know Al is going to call, the Peace Prize, the Robert Mueller Peace Prize, after Ted Turner got the first one. Why? Because we're reassuring them that they're doing the right thing. So awards are really important because it allows you to thank that person, and it also reassures the people who are watching that they too can do peace.
Well, we're so excited about Al's wonderful award. Yeah, Legacy for Peace Award on the 5th. Fantastic. Everyone needs to take a look at that too, because Al has really been a wonderful, wonderful gift to all of us. And he's also executive producer of an incredible show, because you've mentioned Costa Rica, called A Brave Peace, about how Costa Rica, surrounded by hostile military powers facing this great threat, abandoned their military, got rid of it. And then nobody could attack them. How do you attack a country with no military? And they've lived and thrived for 70 years since, having health care for all, having an ecological environment, having happiness, one of the greatest happiness indexes on the planet. So do watch Al's other movie, A Brave Peace. Anyway, unless Barbara has a last word, and then we'll want to sign off. Any last word about your other things, your book, other things that people can get?
I think that peace is possible, and it begins with each of us. And I'd love to hear some of the ideas that you have created for peace. There's my email. It's right there on the chat box. And, it seems so simple, but if you need models, go to Rotary E-Club of World Peace, listen to the speakers. They're all archived. Robert Mueller and I created 7,500 ideas and dreams for a better world, and we give them out every morning, free. goodmorningworld.org. It's a free email, goodmorningworld.org. And that email has been going on for 20 years. And you can imagine the archival material. Robert said the best education he ever got was from the United Nations. And when I married him, I said, he wanted to be Secretary General so he could do a Good Morning World. And I said, you don't need to be Secretary General. The internet is here. And so we have been producing this Good Morning World newsletter every day for the last 20 years.
Wow.
All right. Well, and by the way, just one little note, because I was just looking at the chat. Someone mentioned not being able to get into a country with the World Passport. And yes, the World Passport, like the Nansen Passport that was originally created by one individual, got endorsed by the League of Nations. And then it helped hundreds of thousands of refugees. The World Passport right now is even though it's been stamped by virtually every country, especially in this current era, it's often not recognized by many countries. It will be by one border guard, not by another. It is not an assured travel document. So if you go to, as Melanie says in the chat box, theworldismycountry.com/passport, you'll see actually warnings about how Mos Def, Yassine Bey, actually got detained for using it, as of other people. So we like to present our U.S. passport first when we have that option. and then say, and Melanie can tell you more.
The passport is a humanitarian tool. It's a way, we don't want passports. We want no passports. We want to be able to travel. It's a human right. It is in the Declaration of Human Rights, Article 13.2, that we can travel. You know, who doesn't want to travel? Who doesn't want to go other places? We have that right, and we have to acknowledge that right. The more people that have the passport, the more power it will have, the more the people who talk about visualizing and throwing it out there. Yes, I have the right to travel. Yes, I can go where I want. My goodness, you're stopping me? You can't. This is our world. We're sharing it together. We're sharing, like I said, the air and the water. We're sharing it. So it's a start. It's a way to make this happen. So we need to stick together. We need to make that happen. So please get a passport. Please have a world passport. And please help that happen. Help have the future that you want to see.
And tell us very briefly the revolutionary conversation at the LAX border where what the woman said about your passport.
Okay, this was a few years ago before, a few years ago, but I was traveling. I had my world passport. I gave my American passport. Oh, could you please stamp my world passport? And she looked at it and she said, is this the passport I'm not supposed to stamp? And I'm like, and she goes, give it back to me.
So she was making her own declaration of world citizenship. So on that note, we all make our own declaration of world citizenship. Oh, I think we have, Al, you have one other brief comment?
Oh, I just thought I'd buy these for my children and grandchildren.
Yeah.
Oh, a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
And you can also get the world, world birth certificate. Get the world birth certificate as well. That's going to be so crucial. So get that for your kids.
Oh, really?
When you click on that link, you'll see you can get a world birth certificate, you can get a world ID, you can get other wonderful presents for your children. And you saw right in the movie, in fact, people signing up and getting the world passport. So, well, we're about to sign off. With that, let me say thank you, everybody, for joining our podcast. And have a great day. And we will see you next week, same time, same place, right here on the People Powered Planet podcast.
World citizen, lift up your voices. Oh, you know we got something to say. All we need is the same directions, heading in one way.